He created the tribunal that judged him. He built the committee that condemned him. And 84 days after his execution, the man who signed his death warrant followed him to the same blade. This is not a story of heroes and villains. This is the story of a revolution that devoured its own architects, one by one. Story start, but listen carefully. Subscribe and like. France trembled beneath the weight of hunger, inflation, and fury. Bread cost more than a man could earn in a week. The monarchy had collapsed, yet peace remained a dream out of reach. And in the middle of this storm stood Georges Jacques Danton, a towering figure with a thunderous voice and a will that could bend crowds like wind bends a field of wheat. He did not simply join the revolution. He became its heartbeat, pumping fire into its veins. They called him the Tribune of the people. When he spoke, the earth seemed to shift. His speeches were not delicate phrases, they were war drums. Danton demanded the will of the people be heard, and the crowds followed him with fervor. It was Danton who proposed the creation of the Revolutionary Tribunal, insisting that enemies of the Republic be judged swiftly. His voice shaped the very machinery that would later seal his fate. Out of chaos, Danton forged order. With fiery conviction, he helped establish the Committee of Public Safety, the supreme authority that would command France's war effort and internal security. Together with colleagues, among them a quiet, calculating lawyer named Maximilien Robespierre, he constructed a system to defend the revolution. But power, once created, takes on a life of its own. At first, Danton and Robespierre walked side by side, bound by revolutionary purpose. But their hearts beat to different rhythms. Danton believed in passion, forgiveness, and the people's instinct. Robespierre believed in purity, a republic of virtue enforced by unbending law. Their alliance was destined to crack like ice under a summer sun. The revolution entered a new phase. Fear stalked the streets as enemies, real and imagined, were dragged to the guillotine. The tribunal Danton helped create became the blade's loyal servant. Ironically, it was Danton who urged restraint, begging the convention to stop the bloodshed. But in a time of suspicion, mercy looked like betrayal. Whispers became rumors. Rumors became accusations. Danton was accused of corruption, treason, and conspiracy. None of it held weight, but in the climate of terror, accusation was enough. Robespierre remained silent, too silent. Silence, Danton realized, was deadlier than any spoken word. On a cold night, soldiers hammered on Danton's door. They came not for a criminal but for a symbol, one too powerful, too beloved, too dangerous. Danton laughed as they shackled him. "If I am guilty," he thundered, "then none of you are innocent." The tribunal was a performance, not a trial. By law, 12 jurors were required. They assembled 7, the only 7 who could be trusted to convict him. Danton requested 15 witnesses. Denied. Desmoulins asked for Robespierre to testify. Denied. Justice had been replaced with choreography. But Danton refused to play the role of a doomed man. His voice echoed through the courtroom windows, spilling into the streets. Every sentence struck like a hammer. "You want to silence me?" he roared. "Because my voice carries the truth, louder than your lies." On the second day, the convention passed a new law crafted specifically for Danton. It allowed the tribunal to silence any defendant who insulted the court. The judge rang his bell to shut him up. Danton only shouted louder. They ordered the guards to remove him by force. Danton was dragged from the courtroom as he kicked and shouted curses upon them all. With Danton gone, the verdict became inevitable. Guilty. Condemned. A death sentence signed in ink and fear. In prison, Danton comforted others instead of himself. He joked, he laughed, he promised that history would avenge them. His closest companion, Camille Desmoulins, trembled, not for himself, but for his wife and child. Danton placed a hand on his shoulder. "Courage, Camille. We will sleep well tomorrow." The morning sky was gray when the tumbril rolled through Paris. Crowds gathered in eerie silence. Danton stood tall, refusing to bow his head. When they passed Robespierre's residence, Danton bellowed. At the scaffold, Danton delivered his final blow of pride. "Show my head to the people." It is worth the trouble. Moments later, the blade fell. A roar filled the square. Some cheering, some weeping, some stunned into silence. A giant had fallen, but his shadow remained. Paris felt emptier without Danton's voice. Even his enemies sensed the shift. Something had been unbalanced. The revolution had devoured one of its own creators, and the machinery he built ground on mindless, unstoppable. Robespierre grew colder, more isolated, more absolute. He believed himself the guardian of virtue. But fear is a poor foundation for devotion. The same accusations once used against Danton now whispered toward Robespierre himself. Robespierre was arrested amid chaos. A gunshot shattered the room. A bullet smashed into his jaw, leaving him unable to speak. A cruel twist of fate for a man whose voice once ruled the nation. He spent his final night in agony, silent, bleeding, powerless. The morning sun rose cold and indifferent. Robespierre was dragged to the guillotine he had sent thousands to. Unable to speak his final words, he trembled as the crowd roared. Not with fear, but with hunger for closure. And so, 84 days after Danton, Robespierre met the same fate. The prosecutor who condemned Danton? Executed. The judge who silenced him? Executed. The committee members who cheered his downfall? Executed. The revolution had no enemies left, so it began to feast on its own architects. History remembers Danton not as a villain nor as a saint, but as a man whose fire shaped an era. His flaws were vast, his pride immense, yet his courage undeniable. The revolution consumed him, but his voice continues to thunder across centuries. A warning, a prophecy, and a testament. Don't forget to subscribe for more real history videos.